but the brand can be as little as 5 people on your team in your corporate job thinking that Burroughs is a reliable person and Burroughs is someone trustworthy. Whatever corporation you're working in, observe for a couple of days or weeks to see how people do get promoted in this place. How do people move up in the hierarchy? What are the steps that you would take? What are the books that you need to read? What are the skills you need to pick up? Careers are becoming shorter and shorter. There's a statistic that an average American has 14 different jobs between retirement, right? So what people often do is they burn bridges when they're leaving a company or leaving a boss. Keep those bridges alive, building, because you on social media and on your brand, you can't control what people say about you. So we're in the knowledge economy, right? So knowledge, we used to pay a lot for atoms, and many people will pay for the watch or the shoes or things that are tangible. But more and more people are paying a premium for knowledge. So people will automatically start reaching out to you because they trust you, they follow you. And trust is a currency. That is the currency of a personal brand is trust. Because if people trust you, they'll do business with you.
Hello, friends. Welcome again. So, today on this podcast, I have my friend Amir Anzur joining us. Now, a little bit about Amir before I go and talk about the topic itself. Amir is an internet entrepreneur whose clients have included names like Apple, Amazon, Google, and Xbox. So, pretty impressive entrepreneurial journey there. And he has won the European Prize for Innovation and written 6 books. This is something which was even more inspiring for me. As I've mentioned at times on my videos, that is a dream I have, which is to write a book, all the knowledge that I kind of impart and all the knowledge that I've taught myself and read. Would just like to capture it in one book. So maybe that would be one help I'll eventually reach out to Amir for. And the best thing about him, which is why we are here on the podcast, is he teaches people about using their personal brand to create wealth. So he's a champion of personal branding. How do you create your personal brand? But for us, we would be even more interested in knowing why personal brand, and then what about personal brand and how we go about creating all that. But anyways, that was a quick intro on Amir. So Amir, over to you. I would like you to first share a few words on yourself, your journey, what you've done, and then we will move into the key topics of this podcast. So over to you.
So thanks, Burroughs, for having me. So essentially, I'm 46 years old as at the time of this recording, and I made my first $1,000 in 1999 when I was 21, 22 years old. And that was through affiliate marketing. And I learned about the internet at that stage. I was working in a corporate Accenture at the time, and I was doing this on the side. And I got really excited about the internet. And from that point, I soon resigned from my job, did my first startup, and I've done multiple since then. And so what I really got passionate about was the opportunities of the internet. So I'm a little bit older than a lot of your viewers, but basically I've been pre-internet, started my career, and then post-internet. And I've been an entrepreneur, and I worked in the corporate sector for companies like Deloitte, for Accenture, and governments of Dubai. So I understand what it takes to have a career both as an entrepreneur and in the individual in the corporate sector that many of your viewers would be on. And what I do is I teach people. One is about personal branding and how to monetize their personal brand. So a lot of people, they can do what you're doing now, right? Which is creating a side hustle. You have a daytime job, you make a decent living. And then what you do is you start producing content, then eventually selling courses or coaching. And all that can lead to a 6-figure or even 7-figure business for yourself. And when we create the brand, it's not for everyone. Everyone has a unique brand. Some people will want to create a brand and be an entrepreneur or go into teaching of some sort. And some people will want to, just create a personal brand that helps them get further in their career and their company. So what I go through, the first thing that I go to through when I work with someone is uology, the study of you. And when you study yourself and you say, what are your goals? What are your ambitions? Who are some of your heroes, whether it be online or offline or in your career, so that you can say, okay, I want to be like X person.
Hmm.
And then you can start crafting your personal branding strategy to say, okay, that person got to that stage by, for instance, in my field, uh, writing books, right? So a lot of people that work in coaching and consulting, they've written books and they've highlighted their experience. So what I do is say, okay, what are all the steps that you could take to get to that level? And I coach people around that. So my passion is teaching, and that's what I enjoy doing. And then writing these books, it's been a form of teaching because you can reach more people, you can structure your thoughts, and what I coach people around is also getting their books out to market because it's a great way of elevating your brand.
Cool. Thank you, Amir. So, one question: what is a personal brand? And I'm kind of taking a step back to what kind of you just shared already. But what is a personal brand? Like for me, if I have to go and think of it in a very traditional sense, it would be just being a celebrity or being an influencer. Is that it, or there is more to it?
Well, look, there's at the macro level, right? Being a big brand is a celebrity, but we are all celebrities, if you like, right? Especially in the social media economy. Even if you're posting to Facebook and you have 200 followers, you're still creating your brand because you want people to see that you've gone on this great holiday or whatever you want to um, envision people with your brand. But the brand can be as little as 5 people on your team in your corporate job thinking that Burroughs is a reliable person and Burroughs is someone trustworthy. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust, right? So if you can do that, even if it's at a micro level, right? So a lot of us are micro celebrities, right? So I'm a celebrity, might have a few thousand followers on my social media, and a few tens of thousands maybe have seen me speak at events, but that's nothing in the grand scheme of thing, right? I'm not a Tony Robbins or a big brand that might be out in the world, and that's okay. So for us to create that personal brand, it's what people think of us and what is it that we stand for. So we consciously start choosing, okay, I want to be associated with being an internet guru, or you, for instance, you're a finance guy, or helping people in the corporate sector with their careers. So there's 3 or 4 keywords that people would associate with you and your brand, right? Just like companies are brands, like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Disney, people are brands too, right? So when I work with clients, I even start with simple as your name, right? So
Mm.
does your name need changing, right? So if you look at celebrities like Bob Dylan, they had Jewish sounding names and then they made them more marketable to the American market, right? So if you have so sometimes, like yesterday I was working with an Indian client that had a long Vivekant, what was his first name, has said, look, why don't you just shorten it to Vivek, because that's what people call them anyway, but be consistent on that online, because you want to be appealing to more people. Now, I'm not one to say, we all have our heritage on our names, etc., but just choose things consciously. Just because a name was chosen for you or your nationality, you don't need to have that as a part of your brand. So just choosing those elements of a brand, and a brand can be as simple as being popular in high school. uh you know Choosing a wife, like, they're gonna look at your brand as well. They're gonna look at not just your social media, but your brand, your house, your car, etc. I'm not someone that says you have to wear Rolex or whatever that is, but just be conscious of your brand.
Got it. Very clear. This makes sense. Now, the question I have in front of me here is more from career point of view. let's say I have a stable job and I've been working in this company for 2, 3 years, and I see a future here in the company, 1, 2 levels up at least. So next 5, 6 years, maybe I have a career path as well. How does working on a personal brand help me?
So I'm not saying that a personal brand necessarily means posting on LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube, because it's not right for everyone and every career situation. And you might have a traditional company that doesn't like that, right? But for instance, you could clean up your LinkedIn profile with your past experiences. So if your work colleagues look you up, they see that, okay, you were high school student council president, or you're into
Mm.
fishing or golf or whatever those other parts of you are, so that you're conscious of your LinkedIn at a very basic level. Then if you wanted to use social media a bit more, you could start posting on things that make you sound intelligent in your field and your niche. Now, the other thing that is probably more crucial than your social media life, depending on how in person your office is, because some people are meeting on in the office and some are not. But you know, how do you interact with the right people? Are you having coffees with people in your office before you need something from them, right? So some people, for instance, they only call you when they need something, or they need a job, or they need a promotion. But are you building those relationships before you need something? That, because that's a part of your personal brand, looking them up for a coffee or a lunch without a major agenda. uh, what is your background on your Zoom, right? So like, you've got a professional background. What is that saying about you? Little things like that. Are you shaving or not shaving? Now, in some circles, entrepreneurship wise, they don't like shaves and etc.
Yeah.
Some corporates, they expect you to have a shirt on. So all of those things, like if you work in some investment banks, for instance, depending on the level, they'll tell you what kind of collar to have, and so like, those are like very subtle things that are in the culture of a
Yeah.
corporation. And each corporation has their own working ways of working, right? So whatever corporation you're working in, observe for a couple of days or weeks to see how people do get promoted in this place. How do people move up in the hierarchy? What are the steps that you would take? What are the books that you need to read? What are the skills you need to pick up? And just reaching out to people a level or two above you to see how they act, how do they dress, how do they speak, what kind of events they go to, so that you're conscious. You're building your own strategy. Just like when you're driving from New York to LA, you have a map and you have some sort of vision. It doesn't mean it's going to go smoothly. Things go wrong. You could get terminated in your job. Things can go wrong, but you have a journey and a map that you're following, and then you're going towards.
Oh, it's so well said. And especially with regards to career, it's not the person who works the hardest gets promoted or goes up in the organization. It's the person who works on networking, on building the network and building on their personal brand. I've seen this over and over again. I've changed like 3 companies already, and I've seen it. If you're just the guy who will burn the midnight oil and that's it won't take you to the places you want to go. You have to be smarter than that, and this is where personal branding comes into play. So I completely agree. And
Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
yeah, well, when I started my career, I was working for a large American consultancy. And in England, there's this culture of going to the bar, right? Like pubs. And what I discovered was a lot of business was actually happening after 6 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., when people go home or go out for the evening and go meet the client for a dinner or have this social thing. Because what they're doing is they're talking socially. They might start by talking about the football, and then they talk about business and do this. In Dubai, when I lived in Dubai, they might go to the mosque to say a prayer together, and then pray together, and then do some business along the way. So you have to figure out the culture and the environment you're working on. I'm not saying break your ethics if you're not into drinking or whatever, but it does influence the brand, right? It does influence the sales in many organizations.
No, completely agree and makes sense. And on top, I would just also want to say that for people, especially someone like me, if I go 10 years back, who has limited themselves to a particular company, industry, it's an advice for them, which is it will not last forever. And you have to think beyond the boundaries of your company, your organization. So you very well said and talked about how you build your personal brand and equity within the organization. But I think at the same time, and I'll come to this as a question as well, you need to build a brand outside the confinements of your company. And this is what happened with me. So with Procter& Gamble, I was seeing a career of another 20, 25, 30 years. And there are people who've done that. But it's just that my personal priorities came in between and I had to make a decision, moving to Canada and all. And that's where I lost my identity, because all my identity, my branding was linked to that company, and that's it. There was nothing outside. I never worked on anything outside the company. And hence, now I recommend people that even if you love your company, love your organization, you see a long term career there, still work on other identities outside the company and also promote them and brand them. So you also have, like, when I introduce myself, I just don't go like I am X from Procter and Gamble. Rather, I have other things to talk about as well, because I am not just linked to that identity. I have other identities as well. So I assume you would agree to that. And if you do, what I would like to ask you is, how do we go about building that brand which is not confined to the boundaries of the organization I'm working for?
So you see, that is a part of your brand, right? Working for Procter and Gamble, it gave you a good stamp that helped you get other jobs, right? But we are in an economy which is much more faster moving, right? So in our parents' generation, they kept a job for 30, 40 years and then they retired. But this generation and the one after, they are going to be in a job for 2 to 3 years. Even within a big company like Procter and Gamble, you will move around within that company. So you just have to be aware that's going to happen, that careers are becoming shorter and shorter. There's a statistic that an average American has 14 different jobs between retirement, right? So that was 10 years ago when I read that, and now I know it's going to be even more, right? And a lot of people are wanting to be entrepreneurs. I don't say that entrepreneurship is for everyone, because a great company has great advantages, but you still need to think about your personal brand in your niche and industry. So there's different ways that you can do it. One of the ways that I found really beneficial for me was writing a book on my subject, which was digital wealth creation, because what that did was when I went to interviews or when I was getting hired for positions, they're like, oh, this guy must know his stuff on that topic, right? So if you are someone that wants to be known in the finance world, for instance, then you could write, finance for retailers, a book, right? And that then can act as your calling card. So what you do is you give that out to people. So you don't sell that book necessarily, because few people might buy that book, especially if you don't have a large social media following or social following. But what you do is you plant that book to give away to people that might want that, right? So what I did is I gave away copies of my book, and then out of those, certain executives hired me as for my consulting services, right? And for my expertise. Even if they didn't necessarily read my book, they built trust. That's a thing. Now, another thing you're doing, YouTube channel, right? So a lot more people, it's still early days, because relatively we look at Mr. Beast and his millions of followers, we think we'll never get there. But even if your channel has 100 views, that's still 100 people listening to you. I did a TEDx talk and that it has over 100,000 views, and I was thinking, wow, that's 100,000 views, 100,000 people in a uh, auditorium like that's a big stadium listening to your message, right? So there's different ways of giving out your message, whatever that message might be. Some people prefer Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or some people want to be low low profile but be known as the expert, the go-to expert in that field, right? So that they're known, but you just want to build, you want to be conscious of the brand that you built in your career. Even in your career, you're going to know that Barroso is the go-to guy for marketing or the go-to guy for finance, even though you're nowhere on social media that says that. So just be the guy that's helpful, that's caring for people, that generally wants the company and other people to succeed, and it'll come back to you. I lived in the UK, and I moved out of the UK for 10 years, and then I came back, and I was struggling to get on the job market and find my identity and brand. And what I had to do was reach out to managers that I worked with 10 years before and say, hey, Mark, remember me? We worked together at this company 10 years ago. It's like, yeah, let's meet up for coffee. Met for coffee, got like really like I said, hey, I'm looking for opportunities. It's like, and he knew that I did good work for him 10 years ago, and automatically gave me a job, 10 years later on after a 15-minute interview. So like that is a personal brand, and the power, like what people often do is they burn bridges when they're leaving a company or leaving a boss. Keep those bridges alive, building, because you, on social media and on your brand, you can't control what people say about you, right? So people might say, that guy's so selfish, right? So you want to be that guy that people always talk good about.
I so agree on that. I so agree on that, which is, it's a small world. Things can come circling back. So you might as well build those connections and leave on a very strong and good footing. Now, let me talk about myself, and I want you to expand on it later, which is the reason I started to work on my personal brand is because I wanted to monetize it. And the reason was not now, not tomorrow, not day after tomorrow, next year, 2 years down the lane, but eventually. Because I was like, okay, I have a very good career. I love my life. I am getting paid well. But eventually, I want to pick things from my career which I enjoy, which I love, because not everything about my day job I like. So I started doing and picking things which I really like. And I'm like, okay, if I can build a life around the things I love to do and remove everything else, that would be an ideal life. So, how about I start working towards that life now in small increments that eventually in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years' time, I can reach there and not look back and go like, I wish I had started earlier. So, for instance, in my case, I really loved coaching people in organization, whether it is coaching them to do a presentation, coaching them to perform a certain on a certain project in a certain meeting and all. And I would, it would really give me a lot of energy, and I would really enjoy it. And hence I picked up that part, and I was like, if I can build a life around teaching, that would be amazing. And hence I kind of stumbled on YouTube, and that's how I started YouTube, which has started to monetize for me now as well. So what better place to be than have a passion and work on the passion, and the passion pays you as well. Now, this is just one example. This is my example. Given you coach people like me, multiple people like me, I would just like you to elaborate as to what are the other ways you think or suggest people can eventually monetize their personal brand. So you talked about building personal brand, but how do you go about eventually monetizing their personal brand? What are the streams? What are the ways?
So we're in the knowledge economy, right? So knowledge, we used to pay a lot for atoms, and many people will pay for the watch or the shoes or things that are tangible. But more and more people are paying a premium for knowledge. Knowledge is basically just me speaking to you is being created, right? It's not costing us anything, right? So we're doing all this on free. We're even hosting on YouTube for free. And so what that means is that you've got many different revenue streams. Now, you as Burrows, you have knowledge that you've gathered over your 2 decades of career, right? So you're going to be monetizing, and people will say, I want to pay Burrows. If I have a session with him for 1 hour, I know it'll save me 2 years of work, right? Because you can see patterns in people that they cannot see by themselves. So coaching and consulting is just one of the ways, right? So that is straight off one way. You can have group masterminds, right? So people looking to break into Procter and Gamble, how do they do that, right? So you could have a course or a mastermind where you can say to them, come pay $1,000 a month and I will coach you around this. So one of my students, what he does is he gets people into consulting companies. So he got into one of the top tier, like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, these are called MBB companies. And so what he does is he coaches them on how to get into the companies and with the interviews. Now he charges $3,000 plus 2.5% of your first year's salary, right? So what you can do is say, like, if I'm successful in coaching you, and people, when they realize that starting salaries over $100,000, they say, oh, actually I'm making 60,000, and if this guy can get me $100,000 job, I'm only paying $2,000, $3,000 more for him, right? So you could have those types of deals too. Now, as you go, the great thing about what you're doing is you're reaching out and you're interviewing people like myself, right? So you are learning yourself, right? You and I are just having a conversation, but you're learning from me as I'm learning from you, but we're connecting with people. Now, the people that you're more likely to interview are people that have more knowledge than the average person on a certain topic, right? So you are building up your knowledge capacity. Then you're also building up your network, right? So when you connect with me and you share this interview with people, when we have this recording, you will say, hey, Amir, I've got this recording. Here's our interview. Guess what? I'm going to send it to my network, right? Because I'm on it, right? So if you have 10 people like me who have 100 guests, 100 people in their network, that's 1,000 new people you're reaching, right? So over the next, because what I like about you is you're thinking so far ahead, and I've spoken to you before about how you organize your finance in a way that you're very structured and methodological. Few people think that far ahead. They jump in the opportunity. You're creating the opportunity. You're building the house before it's raining, right? So you're building that house before it's raining. You're putting the infrastructure in place so that in case, God forbid, you lose your job, something, like the recession comes, you can jump on this other bandwagon, right? So that you won't be stressed. That most people are stressed when they jump into a business, right? So you're planting your seeds already. You're not taking major risk, right? So you're just having conversations. You're building digital assets. Now, in the old economy, people used to think about bank accounts as like their assets. They thought about property. How much property, real estate do I own? I own an apartment in New York. It costs $500,000. I have $100,000 in my Chase Manhattan bank account. Those are my assets. Now we're in the digital economy where having 1,000 people follow you, and the right 1,000 people. So I'm not saying 1,000,000 people, but 1,000 people that are CFOs of companies follow your YouTube channel can create more wealth for you than having $1 million in the bank or $1 million apartment. So you are building those digital assets, which is important. So every time that you do a video like this, right, that's building up assets, and that is evergreen content, because just like people are building relationship with you and I right now. So if they're listening to this content, they're building relationship with both Burrows and I. And what happens is, a year later, someone's listening to this interview for the first time, they're building an asset. 10 years later, you're built an asset and a relationship. And what YouTube is allowing you to do is build relationships with many people, right? So you yourself said, now that you're getting more popular, people are starting to reach out to you for coaching, right? So people will automatically start reaching out to you because they trust you, they follow you. And trust is a currency. That is the currency of a personal brand, is trust. Because if people trust you, they'll do business with you. I had a blog and a blog, and I pitched to this guy $350,000 investment in one of my ventures. And after one meeting, he decided to invest. And I was like, why did you do that? It's like, oh, I read your blog and I like the way you think. And so I was like, wow, that like this is over a decade ago. So like I saw the benefits of, putting yourself out there and your ideas. Some people are going to not like you, but some people are going to love what you do. And there's 5 billion people online, and you only need 10 of them to do a good business.
Amir, this is amazing wisdom, and I just have some reflections on what you said. One is, when people ask me, so how do I start? Where do I start from? And also, there are times when even I felt like as if I'm selling snake oil, or I have imposter syndrome and all. And what I tell them is, and this is how I started, which is, think of a time when someone gave you a phone call and asked you a question, and they know you. For instance, it's a friend. That means two things. One is there is someone looking for that question. So let's say the question is, how do I get into Procter & Gamble? And they think that you have the answer to that question. So you have the answer according to them, and there is a question that someone has. If you have this combination, that is your place where you start making your content around and you start building your personal brand around. Second is, I love what you talked about networking, because when you network, you grow that chain as well. And hence, this is kind of amazing, because you'll build on people and you'll build followership on people. And the last thing is, when you're building network, frankly speaking, in order to monetize, you only need 1,000 people. And I don't know if you've read the blog by Kevin Kelly, 1,000 True Friends, because if there are 1,000 people who can pay you $100, that's $100,000. And those are the people who will pay you no matter what you do. Like, you come up with the merchandise, they'll pay you. You come up with a book, they'll buy it. You come up with a YouTube video, they'll watch it. So that's all you need. Anyways, Amir, thank you. Thanks a lot for coming up. And this was so valuable, and more so valuable for me. I don't know, I'm sure people will also find value from this as well, but I learned really a lot. And it kind of reassured me on the path I am, or I am trying to be. So thank you for coming in. In the end, I just want to ask you if there is any message for all the listeners who would be listening to this podcast. That is one. And second, where can people find you?
So my message is take action, right? Because the thing is, you're going to make mistakes in building your personal brand. Sometimes you'll feel like a snake oil salesman trying to pitch stuff, but just go out and try stuff out, because the more you try out, the more you're comfortable with, and you'll find your brand. You'll find what it is that you sell, or what it is that you're trying to achieve. And go out and don't be embarrassed by going on podcast or starting a YouTube channel just because your first friend makes fun of you and says something and you quit. Don't do that. Try out things, be respectful, take advantage of the digital world. And if people want to find me, they can find me on amiranzur.com, AMIRANZUR.com. And they can even download a couple of my books that'll get them started on creating their wealth online. So it's been great speaking with you, but just go out and take action and try it. Because the great thing about learning in the era that we're on is that, we're all making it up as we go along. And you don't need a university degree or a PhD to do this. All you need to do is look at people that you're following. Like if you're following Burrows, look at what he's doing and say, hey, he's a step ahead of me. Let me get started now. and let me just follow what he's doing. Oh, I like what Amir's doing here, so I'm going to follow this idea of his here, and I'm going to be a culmination of all these brands, right? Some of ideas from someone that you follow that has 1 million followers, some are going to be with 100 followers, right? And you're going to find your own identity, what resonates with you. And that, because the more you inspect yourself, like where you come from, your parents, your background, what comes to you, and it'll happen. And there's 5 billion people that are on the internet. You're going to find your tribe.
Thank you, Amir. This is wonderful. Take action. It's so important advice. Very simple, but so important, because I was reluctant to take action for various reasons, starting with what my friends will think of. Some of the friends did make fun of me, but they watched my video once, and that was it. And they were not even my target audience, by the way. And I was concerned about them. So thank you for saying that. It's really important. And thanks for coming up. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Feroz.
Cool.